The man couldn't believe what he was seeing. The other cars were racing by. They didn't seem to see her, or they couldn't be bothered. The old lady was pushing her stroller down the busy interstate highway. Didn't she have any family, a son, or a neighbor that could assist her? She slowly wobbled along the side of the road. It was a disaster waiting to happen. Jonathan Jenners, a kind-hearted man in his mid-30s, had always been known for his empathy and willingness to help others. Working at the Air Force Base in Oklahoma was just one aspect of his life. But it was a job he took seriously, knowing that it played a vital role in his community. One sweltering summer day, after a particularly long shift, Jonathan decided to take a detour on his way home, hoping to enjoy some fresh air before reaching his destination. Jonathan had just finished another long day at work on the military base. As he drove home, the scorching summer sun beat down on the dry plains, creating waves of heat that shimmered in the distance. Jonathan was lost in his thoughts when he suddenly noticed something shocking ahead. An elderly lady pushing a stroller and carrying groceries, slowly walking in the middle of the road. As he drove down a scenic country road, he noticed an unusual sight. An elderly lady, with wisps of silver hair peeking out from under her sun hat, was slowly pushing a stroller and carrying bags of groceries. The sight touched Jonathan's heart, and he couldn't help but feel concerned for her well-being. Why was she all alone? Nobody could walk in this weather, never mind an old lady. Feeling a sense of concern and compassion, Jonathan immediately pulled over and approached the old lady. Her name was Carol, a sprightly 71-year-old who insisted that she was fine and enjoyed the exercise. But Jonathan, being the caring soul he was, wouldn't hear of it. He insisted on helping her, telling her to get into his car while he took care of her groceries. Would she oblige? Jonathan pulled over and approached the lady, introducing himself as he asked if she needed any help. Carol smiled warmly and assured him that she was perfectly fine, explaining that she enjoyed the exercise of walking back from the local market. However, Jonathan sensed her fatigue and the weight of the groceries she carried, and he insisted on helping her, explaining that he couldn't let her continue alone in the scorching heat. With gentle persistence, Jonathan convinced Carol to accept his assistance. He opened the trunk of his car and carefully placed her groceries inside. He grew up with his grandmother, so he was particularly affected by it. Carol, grateful for the kindness of this stranger, allowed him to pack her groceries in the car. She seemed a bit weary as he put her stroller inside. "What do I have to lose?" She laughed quietly to herself. Carol was grateful for the assistance, and during the drive, they began chatting about their lives. The conversation flowed easily, and they discovered they had more in common than they initially thought. Both of them had lived in Oklahoma their entire lives and had seen the area change over the years. Carol was starting to open up to Jonathan. He seemed like a genuine man. Could she trust him? As they drove along, Carol began sharing stories of her past, reminiscing about her youth and the adventures she had experienced. She was a wonderful woman who helped to bring her community together. Jonathan listened attentively, captivated by the wisdom and richness of her tales. In return, he shared anecdotes from his own life, creating an unexpected bond between the two. Jonathan felt his heart twinge as Carol spoke about how much pain she had endured over the years. She went through a lot. They reached Carol's quaint little cottage, surrounded by a beautiful garden bursting with colorful blooms. As a gesture of gratitude, Carol invited Jonathan inside for a glass of lemonade. He gladly accepted, curious to learn more about the fascinating woman he had met. When they arrived at Carol's house, Jonathan admired the American flag proudly displayed outside her home. "I have never seen such a bright, clean flag before," he complimented her. He seemed to have struck a nerve because The old lady quickly looked away and changed the subject. Did he say something wrong? She went inside the house. Jonathan walked behind her. "I'm sorry." He tried to apologize. "I hope I didn't say anything to offend you." He tried to look at her, but she couldn't face him. The old lady waved her hand up and down. She started sobbing quietly. Jonathan didn't know what to do. Should he hug her and try to console her? Perhaps she would get the wrong idea. There, Carol. It's quite all right. You don't have to tell me anything, okay?" The old lady quietened down and sat on a lounge chair. Jonathan drank his lemonade and walked around her living room. Inside the cozy home, memories adorned every wall and shelf. Vintage photographs, trinkets from distant lands, and cherished heirlooms filled the space, each with its own enchanting story. Jonathan felt as though he had stepped into a treasure trove of history, and he couldn't help but be inspired by Carol's zest for life. "You have an interesting collection of rare antiques," Jonathan said. "I could look at them all day long, but I better be going." Carol nodded at him and smiled slightly. Jonathan left his lemonade on the table and said, "I better get your groceries from the trunk." He walked outside. He didn't want to get personally involved in the lady's problems. He had done his job and wanted to leave. The kind airman laughed at himself and remembered that old people were a bit more emotional. He should be patient and not think anything of her outburst. When Jonathan came back inside to leave her groceries and stroller, Carol was looking at a photo album. "Come sit here," she said to Jonathan. He listened and took a seat on the couch. "About the American flag," she whimpered. Carol explained that it was there to pay tribute to her son, who had recently passed away while serving in Afghanistan. Jonathan felt as though a zap of lightning went through his brain. He stared at the photo. Boyle. Boyle, he thought to himself. "That name sounds familiar," he said. "I knew him," he said. His name was Sergeant Boyle, and Jonathan's heart sank as he realized the connection. Jonathan knew who Carol was. He knew her son, too. Sergeant Boyle had been one of Jonathan's seniors in the U.S. Air Force. They had shared a bunk together during their deployment, and Jonathan had immense respect for the brave soldier. He remembered Boyle as a mentor, always looking out for the younger recruits and leading by example. Would Carol believe Jonathan's claims? Did she have reason to trust him? Jonathan spoke about his last moments with Sergeant Boyle. He described his features and neat, dark hair. He was a big eater and never missed a meal. As Jonathan shared his memories of Boyle with Carol, tears welled up in her eyes. She realized that Jonathan definitely did know her son. This was a real connection. Carol grabbed Jonathan and hugged him tightly. He was the last person to see her son alive. She believed it was no mere coincidence that Jonathan had stopped to help her on this particular day. In her grief, Carol felt like God had sent Jonathan as a guardian angel, ensuring she would always be okay, even in the face of tragedy. Over lemonade and homemade cookies, Jonathan and Carol continued sharing their experiences, revealing dreams, passions, and the joys of life. "He was just like you," Carol said. The hours flew by, and the initial encounter that was meant to be a brief act of kindness had blossomed into a deep friendship. Jonathan wanted to keep her company, but he had to leave. As the kind airman got up to leave, he said, "I got something for you." He walked outside. Carol smiled at him. Did he forget something in the car? Jonathan walked outside to his car and opened the trunk. Nobody knew it, but he had something of Boyle's. Today, he understood why he was the one that found it all those years ago. Jonathan gave Carol something in her hand. The old lady winced a little at the touch of the ice metal in her warm palm. She opened her palm and looked at what Jonathan put inside. Carol teared and held the metal to her lips. "Thank you, Jonathan," she said and hugged him. He had Boyles' dog tag. He found it in some of his belongings and always kept it with him. Carol was elated that she got a piece of her son's memory. From that day forward, Jonathan made it a point to visit Carol regularly. They formed an unbreakable bond, supporting each other through their losses and celebrating their shared memories. Carol found solace in knowing that someone who cared for her son as much as she did was still in her life. As the months passed, Jonathan's kindness and compassion continued to shine. He organized a memorial service to honor Sergeant Boyle's memory, inviting all their comrades from the base to share stories and remember the fallen hero. The event was heartwarming and gave Carol a chance to connect with her son's military family. Would it be the closure that she was looking for? Their friendship also inspired Jonathan to create a support group for families who had lost loved ones in service. The group provided a safe space for people to share their grief, memories, and hopes for the future. Jonathan's dedication to helping others was truly remarkable and left a lasting impact on everyone he touched. His words brought inspiration to families enduring separation from their loved ones. Word of Jonathan's selfless acts spread beyond the base and into the wider community. People began to recognize him as a man with a heart of gold, always ready to lend a helping hand to those in need. He became a symbol of kindness, and his story inspired others to perform random acts of kindness in their own lives. He was a steadfast soldier of the community. Over time, the support group grew, and the members became like a second family to Jonathan and Carol. They found strength in each other's company, knowing they were not alone in their grief. And through it all, Jonathan never forgot the chance encounter that brought him and Carol together. One kind deed brought a world of love and light to her golden years. As the years passed, the group expanded its reach, touching the lives of many families who had lost loved ones in service. Jonathan created a network of families who have loved ones in the Army or military. Jonathan's legacy of compassion and empathy continued to thrive, creating a positive impact that stretched far beyond the borders of Oklahoma. In the end, it wasn't just the memory of Sergeant Boyle that kept Jonathan and Carol connected. It was their shared commitment to honor his sacrifice and support others who had experienced similar losses. They knew that their friendship, born from a chance meeting on a summer's day, would forever be a testament to the power of compassion and the profound impact one person can have on the lives of others. Do you like this touching and surprising story? If so, we invite you to leave us a comment expressing your opinion. If you want to continue enjoying inspiring stories like this one, subscribe to our channel or check out the other videos shown at the bottom of the screen. Thank you for your cooperation.